Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on quite a fascinating exploration.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about this deep connection between our inner world, our psychology, and the natural world around us.
Right, that whole field of ecotherapy.
Exactly. We've got this collection of essays, really insightful stuff, looking at how our relationship with nature might hold, well, powerful ways to deal with modern life's challenges, stress, anxiety, all that.
Yeah. And our mission here really is to pull out those key insights, those maybe aha
Yeah.
moments
Yeah.
that show how reconnecting with nature isn't just like a nice hobby. It's vital for our well-being.
Vital. That's a good word.
And these essays, they really go beyond just, oh, look at the pretty trees.
Right. It's deeper.
Much deeper. They're using research, looking at old healing rituals, thinking about dreams, personal stories, all pointing towards nature's, well, therapeutic power.
And there's this dedication, isn't there, to
Yeah.
future generations.
Yeah, that really struck me. It's this underlying sense that, look, the planet's health and our health, they're totally linked. You can't separate them.
Which brings us right to the core argument we need to unpack today.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that the environmental crisis,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just pollution or, building everywhere.
Right, not just external stuff.
No, it's deeply tied to an inner crisis, a crisis of consciousness, they call it.
Wow. Okay.
And the essays suggest pretty strongly that healing the earth, well, it actually requires us to heal ourselves first, the human psyche.
So traditional therapy, the kind in an office,
Yeah.
that might only be part of the story.
That's the implication, yeah.
Yeah.
Confining it to four walls might be missing something crucial. So let's get into that.
Okay. Well, what's really fascinating is how they frame what it means to be human.
How so?
They really emphasize that we're organic beings, evolved over millennia to be connected through our senses, to be curious, creative. Exactly, not machines. But modern culture often treats us like we are, like objects almost.
And that leads to what? Feeling cut off.
Yeah, alienation, isolation, this kind of deep emptiness for some people. It's like keeping a plant in a closet. It might survive, technically.
But it won't thrive.
It won't thrive, no.
It's like our true nature, that sort of vital, alive part of us. One essay calls it our organic essence. Gets pushed down.
Pushed aside, yeah, by this more mechanical view of the world. And the idea is when you banish those essential parts, they call them the gods, almost.
Metaphorically speaking.
Right, metaphorically. They can come back as symptoms. Distress, emotional, physical, relationship problems. It's our core self trying to get attention.
Which connects to a critique they make about mental health today.
It does. This pressure, especially in managed care systems,
Right.
for quick diagnoses, quick fixes.
Get them in and get them out.
Kind of, and that can clash with the, the slower, deeper work that real healing might actually need.
And the concern is that some therapy is sort of adapted to that.
Unfortunately, yeah. That's the worry expressed. Adapting to this quicker, maybe more superficial model, and potentially missing those deeper roots.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for me. One essayist talks about this big shift.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, yelling at people about their environmental impact, blaming them.
Which doesn't usually work anyway.
Right. They just started listening, really listening.
And what came out?
Often it wasn't indifference. It was things like deep sadness, grief, real anxiety about the planet.
Wow, things that maybe weren't being talked about in regular therapy?
Exactly. Powerful emotions just sitting there. It really makes you wonder what we miss by only focusing on the individual psyche,
It really does. And you can see how those unacknowledged feelings might then pop up elsewhere, like
Totally.
consumption patterns. People talked about, turning to shopping to cope with depression or after a breakup.
Or just to feel some control.
Yeah, that too. And the essays point out this can become a cycle, almost an addiction sometimes, fueled by shame underneath it all.
And the key thing is shaming people for that,
Yeah.
whether it's shopping too much or whatever.
It backfires.
Totally. It just digs that shame in deeper, making it harder to change.
So it raises this question, if damaging the environment is, in a way, psychologically driven, maybe even a bit crazy,
In that sense, yeah.
then psychology should have something useful to say to environmentalists.
You'd think so. Scolding someone might be like scolding an addict.
Then it misses the underlying reason.
Okay, so how does ecotherapy actually do things differently? What are the practical approaches?
Well, one really basic shift is just taking therapy outside.
Literally.
Literally. Just being in nature can help people slow down, relax, open up more. The environment itself becomes part of the process.
That makes sense. And they broaden the conversation too, right? It's not just about your mom or your boss.
Exactly. It includes your relationship with nature. They might ask, where were your parents born? Where do you live now? What role has nature played in your life? Are there special places for you?
Connecting the personal history to the environmental history. Yeah. And another big theme is the impact of the modern economy. They call it the machine.
The machine.
This relentless drive for growth, for profit. While it achieves things, it can also be pretty indifferent to basic human well-being sometimes.
Well, like damming a river, great for power, maybe not so great for the fish.
Good analogy.
Yeah.
And the essays stress this machine, it's not necessarily evil.
Just its logic has consequences.
Right. Negative consequences for our psychological health, especially if you're already struggling. We tend to look at individual reasons for distress.
But we need to look at the system we're living in, too.
Exactly. The pressure, the alienation, it takes a toll.
Which leads to this idea of praxis.
Yes, praxis. It's crucial. It's not just about having theories or just hiking.
It's connecting them.
Connecting them, yeah. Reflecting critically constantly on how theory and practice influence each other, aiming to increase understanding and ultimately maybe help reshape society towards something more sustainable, and doing it with awareness of history.
And it needs to be grounded, right, in communities.
Absolutely. Rooted in the community, valuing local knowledge, elder wisdom, not just another professionalized therapy disconnected from people's lives.
Okay. Now, the essays also offer some critiques of mainstream psychology, particularly in America.
They do. It's quite pointed. The argument is that in some ways it's become maybe too aligned with government or corporate interests.
Rather than prioritizing people's health and their connection to the environment.
That's the critique, yeah. And they cite some concerning examples.
Like what?
Things like researchers helping develop propaganda for politicians, therapists working for insurance companies, basically questioning other therapists' work, financial links between the people who write the DSM, the diagnostic manual, and drug companies. A sort of silence on government actions that cause harm.
Okay.
And they even touch on the APA's history with military funding, involvement in developing torture techniques, which raises really serious ethical questions about priorities over time.
Oh, that's heavy stuff.
It is. But alongside that criticism, there's also this strong message of hope, focusing on nature's own healing power.
Ah, okay. Like animal therapy.
Exactly. Animal-assisted therapy, AAT. They show really positive results for people with PTSD, folks recovering from heart attacks.
Really? Heart attacks?
Yeah, and even helping reduce agitation and loneliness in elderly patients with Alzheimer's.
That's amazing.
And it's broad. Interactions with dolphins linked to lessen depression, working with farm animals, improving coping skills, confidence for people with schizophrenia, anxiety.
So nature, in all its forms, offers these unique healing pathways.
It seems so. Pathways that maybe complement traditional therapy.
But there's the flip side too, right? The negative impacts.
Definitely. The essays highlight the serious harm from environmental toxins, especially for kids.
Lead paint and things like that.
Lead, yes, but also lots of industrial chemicals found in children's bodies, linked to lower IQ, problems in school, attention issues, behavioral stuff.
And these can last into adulthood.
Apparently so. It's a stark reminder, isn't it?
Yeah.
Our mental well-being is just so tied to the physical health of our environment.
Which leads right into this idea of connection to place.
Yeah. The places we live, they shape us deeply. How we think, feel, act.
So we need a psychology of homecoming.
That's the phrase they use. Valuing local stories, old and new. Encouraging narratives rooted in specific places, reconnecting, reinstalling our relationship with the world, one place at a time.
And they share personal stories to illustrate this.
Oh, yeah. Powerful ones. Someone finding healing through their bond with one particular tree. A therapist finding comfort in nature writing after leaving the wilderness. The deep impact of solitude in the desert.
Terry Tempest Williams is mentioned too.
Yes, her beautiful writing about an open heart and the erotics of place, that really sensory deep connection.
It suggests a shift for therapists maybe. From just psychotherapist to guide.
Kind of, yeah, like a guide helping people explore ecopsychology's role in tending to the Earth's soul, you could say.
Okay, so nature-guided therapy. There's a story about a couple, Belinda and Malcolm.
Right, they're having relationship issues on a caravan trip. Even surrounded by nature, the old problems are still there.
So nature isn't an automatic fix?
No, But what's interesting is how they use something called the Sensory Awareness Inventory, the SAI.
What's that?
It's a tool to help people identify things that make them feel good, positive reinforcers. And surprise, surprise,
A lot of them are nature-based.
a significant number, yeah. Consistently showing nature contributes to happiness, pleasure.
So how did Belinda and Malcolm use that?
Well, they consciously tapped into it. Belinda found comfort looking at reflections in water, smelling eucalyptus. Malcolm used the sound of waves, the smell of cut grass.
Ah, so finding personal anchors in nature. Very practical.
Very practical, and this ties into what the essays call the illusion of disconnection.
The idea that we think we're separate from nature.
It's exactly.
Mhm.
Mainstream culture often sees the planet as just stuff, objects, unrelated. And this view, they argue, is a huge part of the planetary crisis. It is the crisis, in a way, a crisis of disconnection.
And healing, that means. Bridging the gap through our bodies.
That's a key idea. Reawakening our senses, our sentience. Feeling the world through our own flesh connects us back to everything else.
Like that therapist who went from corporate life to off-grid living.
Yeah, a powerful personal example of how somatic awareness, that felt sense of your body, can link directly to environmental concern.
And there's research backing this up.
Apparently so. Studies showing mindful, body-centered activities tend to foster more environmental concern, more respect for nature.
Which leads to interbeing dialogue. Sounds interesting.
It does. It's about that feeling you can get. Increased awareness, relatedness, a bigger sense of self. From spending regular, mindful time with nature, trees, animals, whatever.
Solitude in nature helps too.
Deepens communication, they say, with yourself and the world. Builds ecological identity, joy, meaning.
Okay. But the essays also acknowledge the difficult feelings, right? The response to the big threats.
Oh, absolutely. That disorienting Alice in Wonderland feeling, denial, shock, isolation.
Yeah.
These are seen as totally understandable reactions.
But the point is not to get stuck there.
Right. The focus shifts to proactive steps. Changing lifestyles, moving, simplifying permaculture, sustainable work.
And connecting with others, community.
Crucial. Joining reading groups, relocalization efforts, eco-hoods, co-housing, transition initiatives, finding support, and building resilience locally.
And for a deeper level, there are wilderness rites of passage.
Yeah, that's explored too. Preparing yourself, leaving culture behind for a bit, respecting the wilderness as its own community.
Rituals involved.
Often, yeah.
Yeah.
Chanting, maybe sweat lodges, group decision-making by consensus,
Mm-hmm.
all designed to challenge that isolated self and build respect for the group and for nature.
It sounds like letting nature itself be the therapist.
That's a great way to put it. Create the conditions, preparation, experience, reflection in nature, and the healing can be profound, self-directed.
Like that therapist who shifted to conservation and education. Seeing those as psychotherapeutic tools.
Exactly. Really powerful shift in perspective.
And animal wisdom comes up again.
Definitely. Stories of healing between humans and horses. Like Tawny recovering from abuse through a horse's compassion, learning from horse communities about social bonds, emotions.
It leads to trans-species psychology.
Yes, acknowledging animals have psyches, challenging our human-centered view. Our well-being is tied to theirs. Conservation needs to consider their mental health, too.
Makes sense. There's also a personal story about farming.
Yeah, an essayist finding refuge and healing in organic farming, connecting with the Earth's cycles. The symbolism of the door to nature and this idea of sweet darkness.
Sweet darkness.
That deep natural darkness away from city lights. Seen as a source of insight, growth, mirroring nature's cycle of decay and renewal. Essential for life.
And all this reconnection helps counter hyper-individualism.
That's the argument. That purely political fixes might miss the mark. Small groups, communities, farmers markets, simplicity circles are key for happiness, resilience, especially as resources deplete. It's about waking up to the illusions of modern life, recognizing the psychological side of this global shift.
There's also concern about kids today, isn't there?
A big concern. That kids know more about rainforests far away than their own backyard.
Why is that?
Less access, screens, safety fears, packed schedules, all creating this gap. And fear itself is a huge barrier preventing kids from getting nature's benefits.
This ties into the dream of manic denial.
Yeah, the idea that our frantic pace is partly a defense, trying not to feel the weight of global threats. The image used is a narrow, dangerous tunnel showing how precarious things are.
But we can reverse course, like turning back on a hiking trail.
That's the hopeful image, yes. Simple acts matter, using a clothesline, hand tools, pushing back gently against the tide of uncritical tech adoption.
There's that poignant story about the therapist in Analysis.
Oh yeah, finding solace in nature's details feeling pulled to the mountains while friends relied only on analysis and then the analyst's suicide. It really highlights the grounding power of connecting with the earth.
So the essays call for critical practices in therapy. What does that mean?
It means being willing to question norms, imagine alternatives, not just fit into neat boxes like the DSM or managed care rules.
Embracing longer timescales, unconventional settings.
Exactly. Acknowledging it might be less financially secure, maybe even undermine professional status sometimes, but prioritizing a genuine response to suffering.
Like gardening with a traumatized child, or political action for land restoration.
Those are examples given, yeah. Seeing critical practice as a moral adventure, opening therapy up to wider cultural, ecological, psychic connections.
And finally, the greening of the self.
Yes. This idea that we need a kind of spiritual practice that holds life sacred, encourages joyful connection with nature to face the big challenges.
Breaking down the boundaries of the isolated self.
Right. Recognizing we're part of a moral ecology, interconnected, and this awareness is emerging in different faiths too. It can be, as they say, cracked open by grief.
Grief for the planet.
Grief for the biosphere, yeah. A unique feeling, different from fearing personal death. Losing certainty about the future becomes a key psychological reality.
Water is used as a model for healing.
Paying attention to its qualities, resistance, reflection, flow, cleansing, soothing, a model for being more harmonious, washing away rigidity.
And rituals are important.
Very. Defined simply as purposeful arrangements of time, space, action with intention. Even regular medicine has rituals.
Shamanic rituals, too.
Yeah, focusing on transition, initiation, connecting with spirits of the place to strengthen that bond with the local environment, addressing earth, air, water, fire.
Based on communicating with nature spirits, gods.
That's the premise in those traditions, yeah. Like Native American views of Mother Earth, Grandfather Fire. The essays suggest reintroducing meaningful rites of passage, like vision quests, could deepen community health.
And dream tending, how does that fit?
Stephen Eisenstadt's idea, world and psyche are deeply mingled. Nature images in dreams aren't just symbols, they're alive, embodied.
So you listen to them rather than just interpret them.
Exactly, create psychic reciprocity. This attention can even lead to archetypal activism for the living world.
The images are like voices from nature itself.
That's the view. Voices of the unheard world, expressing nature's intent. Based on understanding the world is animated, interconnected through the anima mundi, the world soul. Dreams as nature dreaming through us.
So dream images might not even start in our heads. They could be from the tree, the animal.
That's the radical suggestion, yeah. Expressions of other beings. Wow. It all comes down to connection, doesn't it? Like that final image of the falling leaf.
Beautifully simple, isn't it? Just being present to that leaf, its journey, it's linked to the tree, the earth, the water within it, that deep interconnectedness.
We've certainly covered a lot of ground here, really explored how our inner lives and the natural world are just woven together.
Absolutely. And it becomes so clear, doesn't it? Healing ourselves, healing the planet, they're not separate things at all. They're intertwined.
Yeah, totally. And hopefully exploring all this, you listening have had some of those aha moments, new ways of seeing things.
Because ultimately, it really does seem to come back to consciousness, doesn't it? How we see our relationship with the living world, that's where the challenges, personal and global, seem rooted.
Right. Recognizing that connection is maybe the first step to finding a different path.
Exactly.
So maybe a final thought for you to mull over. If feeling disconnected from nature fuels these crises, both inside us and out there, what's one small intentional step you could take, maybe even today, to start building a different relationship with the living world right around you?
Yeah, maybe just listening. Considering what voices, what messages from nature might be trying to reach you already.
Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.